So it's the third week of the program and I've already demonstrated a perfect example of overtraining being a neural dominant athlete. The thing is, as these things normally go, it was something I could have easily prevented had I paid attention to the science before I started this training session. The very last of which actually being the way this first warm-up set felt. It looked really good, but being in my position, I have to be able to differentiate between how it looks and feels, and how my nervous system is going to handle the rest of the workout. In this case, that was a lot harder to do because of circumstances that I created before the session even started. Firstly, the fact that I actually took pre-workout for the first time in over a year, and it was really strong. I believe it had 300 milligrams of caffeine and quite a bit of beta-alanine, so my entire body was itchy for this session. Along with the fact that I don't typically train in this gym, although I'm planning to make the switch eventually. All of those things together created a very high mental stimulus, blunting my pain perception and my fatigue level so that I can't read what's actually going on. That's not to say this was unavoidable, however, as even with those circumstances, there were readiness markers throughout the day and before the session, which I noted as subpar, but continued anyway. The first happening as soon as I woke up in the morning and throughout the day being that I can tell when my grip strength and my grip pressure is a lot lower. The second being my albeit blunted perception of my warm-up sets, this one included. As even though I don't have a good sense of fatigue right now from the warm-up sets, I still have a okay gauge for overall RPE. Yet all those things together don't automatically mean I should halt myself from pushing really hard during the session, but it's the fact that I combine that with an artificially lowered recoverability from my day-to-day life, being that I sleep a lot less than I should and my nutrition isn't on point currently. All this information laid out is to say that for me, if there's a gym injury that I sustain or a fact that I'm not getting the progression that I'm looking for, there's always a lot of reasons for that I can look back at in my training. And noting these variables allow me to adapt and change my approach in the future to prevent it from happening again. Which is definitely the case for this session and moving onwards, as I'm going to have to change my entire training program to keep it from happening again and to further boost my progress ability. As this one session has set me back probably a month at least. But to me, it's worth it for the data that I gained in the process. Especially lately with my recoverability being lowered, that's how lots of my programs have gone, where I make it a few weeks in and realize I need to change something, scrap it, and create a new program. It has come to a head at this point with my now back injury that I sustained from this session and the crunchy shoulder I've already been dealing with, plus my recoverability being lowered. I'm going to have to really adapt and change how I approach this entire equation from now on. The first part of that is going to actually be installing daily readiness markers for every single session that I do, being a grip strength tester that I will probably use several times a day just to be completely sure whether I can really go for it in the gym or if I have to pull back, and really paying attention to my warm-up. This last one being a perfect example, as even though it looks easy, you can see my right leg shake a little bit and the effort level is having to be a lot higher than they should be, even though the weight's light. I just wasn't there that day. So all of those warnings that I overlooked and continue with the training anyway resulted in this issue that I'm dealing with now. Although it was likely to happen anyway, so the fact that it happens now and I get the data from it helped me in the long run. At this point, I remember slightly recognizing that the last warm-up set was probably more difficult than it should have been, and I yet still decided to go up in weight to an albeit really fun 595 pull. But I do believe that's what causes almost all gym injuries. The greed and impatience to try to do a weight that you don't deserve yet, as it hasn't been earned through a program that properly ramped to it. And luckily the price of that failure is only a small strain that's going to set me back a month or two, rather than a massive injury. a strain which I didn't even feel until the next day. But here's the top set that started it. That was a pretty hard rep, and the weird thing is I didn't actually even feel the strain yet until the next day, which I likely worsened with the continuation of this program, as you're about to see. At this point, I can already feel my fatigue being extremely high, and I continue to do 2 more sets. Another thing, a big reason my grip slipped for that top set is because those straps are probably past their due date. I have to get a new pair. But another reason is because I also just wasn't strong enough for that day. And this set coming up is actually pause rep, where I tried to pause on the way down on the first rep. It just doesn't work, as my fatigue is already way too high. I couldn't even hold on to the bar anymore because of how high my fatigue was. And just watching the video back now, I can see how much strain I was in, and it was definitely responsible for the nerve pinch injury that I have now. One thing I did note switching to these pound plates after doing the deadlift was the fact that they felt so much lighter. I do hear a lot of lifters always say that pound plates are lighter than keto plates, which is obviously incorrect, it's the same weight. But I think the fact that you're switching from a 55-pound plate to a 45-pound plate makes a really big difference once you feel the weight loss neurologically. It makes it feel a lot lighter, which is why once again I pushed my bench really hard, even though I still have the crunchy shoulder, which I'm about to do the exercise that I was explaining from Squat University to help that issue, which is going to work going forward. One thing to note though, under normal circumstances you shouldn't do a shoulder recovery exercise while in between sets of bench, as the mix-up is essentially creating extra fatigue in between sets for muscle groups that are going to have to contract strong to keep your stability appropriate on bench. But I thought, in my case here, the fact that my shoulder is already messed up, getting my muscle to fire correctly deep into the shoulder is going to help me stabilize more efficiently for my bench sets to come. As for my training plan going into the future, I am switching from a strict 16 or 8 or whatever it is block that I'm going to be using, and I'm going to go to a program where the periodization, my upwards trend in weight and intensity is all determined by the last exercise, my last session. So instead of using a periodization plan that's strictly 16 weeks long, I'm going to start with a moderate RPE and slowly go up from there, and use my top set from the previous session to determine how my next set's going to feel on my next, say, deadlift day. And I'm also going to use grip strength and warm-up readiness markers to help determine what my intensity should be. Should those markers not be there that day, instead of continuing with my skeleton program, I will be having a deload version of it where the intensity is a lot lower and I can help myself recover for the next session and continue on like nothing happened. And as I go up in intensity, see my progress falter or my recoverability further dip for a week or two straight, I will know it's time to completely reset the program and have a week-long deload in between those sessions. This is going to be my approach going forward, and it's essentially an experiment to see how it interacts with my core recoverability right now and my neural drive dominance. My hypothesis is the extra undulating periodization, the fact that I'm going to be able to tone down my intensity based on how my nervous system is for the day, is going to really improve my ability to adapt and get stronger in the long run. And it's going to help me hit that 700 pounds, which I plan to do. Maybe not in 16 weeks now, but it's still going to be soon. From then, I'll switch to my bench or squat program. And this is how a representation of how the pound plates felt lighter, as I felt confident with 3 plates, even though I shouldn't have done it. As you can see, there was still quite a bit of struggle with the second rep, but considering all the fatigue I was already in, and the fact that I think I could have done a few more reps, shows that with this setup and in this gym, I might hit 315 for 10 pretty easily, which is pretty big for my bench considering I haven't even been targeting it for progress in the last even year. I think when I'm fully in this gym and once I do target it for progress, I will probably pass 400, maybe the 450s range from a bench max. And at the 200 pound body weight, 185 in that range, that's going to be massive for when I decide to compete in the future. Although I have had to change my strategy several times in the last few months, I think this is going to be my strategy going forward for a longer period of time, and it's going to be the thing that helps me overcome all the obstacles I've been dealing with lately, and basically transform my progress into something that's even more impossible than I would have already done.